It's March 5th, 2002. This is TNT number 8. Good evening, everybody. See you again tonight. I was meditating late last night trying to get a sense of what tonight's talk should be about. And what I heard was happiness. So we're going to talk about happiness tonight. Everybody's in favor of happiness. And it's sort of interesting to me. All anybody wants is happiness. That's what everybody wants, and that's all everybody wants. It's the primary motivation in the human world. People get married to be happy. Then they get divorced to be happy. They get jobs to be happy. Switch jobs to be happy. They quit jobs to be happy. And they think they're going to retire and be happy then. And when they retire, then they find something to do to be happy. They go on vacations to be happy. Come home to be happy. People rob banks to get some money so they can be happy. People kill people so that they'll stop bothering them, so they can be happy. Everything is motivated by people trying to be happy. Bless you. The problem is that, well, many problems, but one of the problems is that when we do something to make us happy, get a new job to make us happy, it appears to work for a while. And the reason it appears to work is because of the initial satisfaction of getting what we want. And then it appears to work for a while because it keeps us busy, keeps us distracted, keeps us involved, gives us something to do rather than having to think about ourselves. We're thinking about our job, which is a lot happier than thinking about ourselves. But the job gets old, or it gets comfortable, or it gets familiar, and the head frees up, and we start thinking about ourselves, and we become more and more unhappy with our job if we were unhappy with the previous job. Or the next thing in our wish list pops up. We had thought that if I get a job, it'll make me happy, and now that I've got a job, I discover that I'm not happy, but there's always the next thing in my little wish list that I think will make me happy. My wish list is like a push-down stack, like the stack in the cafeteria, you know, where they have the cold salad plates next to the salad bar, you know. And there's a nice cold plate on top. You take that plate off the top, and it's like spring, you know, the next plate's right where the other one was, you know, and so you're over here filling the salad, but, you know, you come back later, take another one, and the next one pops up, you know. And my list of the things that will make me happy is just like that. I get whatever it's going to take to make me happy, and almost immediately, the next thing I need to make me happy pops to the top of the list. It's a lot easier to understand and live with other people if you realize that their primary motivation is that they want to be happy. It really makes it a lot easier to understand why people are doing what they're doing. They're not doing it to do anything to you. They're doing it so they can be happy. Almost all motivations are so they can be happy. The problem is, of course, it doesn't work for about 100 reasons. The first reason it doesn't work is because it's the nature of everything in the material world to change. So, if you get what will make you happy at any given moment, soon it will change, and you will change. And it will no longer be a perfect match. It will no longer be what it takes to make you happy. You will change. And it will change. It will grow old, or it will get big, or it will get small, or the cute little fuzzy puppy will turn into a pit bull, or things change. So that's one of the problems. This world is its nature is change. Another reason you can't get happy by going out there trying to get things out there is because all the stuff that's happening in our life is karmic anyway. So we don't really have a lot of control over it. We may think we're going to get something that will make us happy, but we're really going to get what is the result of our previous actions and our previous behaviors. What we put out, what we put around comes around. What we put out, we get back. So regardless of what you're trying to get out there, what you're going to get back is the results of your own previous behavior in this lifetime or the previous lifetime. So it's all karmic. So you don't really have a lot of control over that anyway.
What about all the things that you do that don't make you happy, that you think you're supposed to do, like think about your problems and not take care of yourself, and there's a million things I do that don't make me happy, and I do them anyway.
Why?
Well, because I'm asleep.
Well, what about them?
Well, you said initially everything we do is to be happy.
Well, that's our plan. That's why you think you're doing it. If you were clear about the fact that it won't make you happy, you won't do it. If you're clear about the fact that it'll make you unhappy, you won't do it. And that's why we're having this talk tonight, to get a little insight into our behaviors that are designed to give us happiness, because there are so many reasons that it doesn't work. The real reason, well, one of the real reasons that it doesn't work is that there's really nothing out there to get. The idea that you can go out there and get something implies that there's something out there that's independent, separate from you and separate from God and doing its own thing, and you can get it. You can get him or her in your life. You can bring happiness to yourself. We are almost indelibly conditioned in the belief that there's something out there that we can get that's affecting us. And the reality is, once again, the basic principle of Joel, everything we experience is an outpicturing of the content of our consciousness. And, or Robert's statement is higher than that, just saying that everything we experience is an expression in mind. But let's look at Joel's statement. Everything we experience is an outpicturing of our consciousness. And yet, we try to get to be happy by getting things from out there, or by trying to change things out there. Go back to the picture that I've mentioned a couple of times, I think, where you're standing in front of the mirror and you see that the hair in the reflection in the mirror is ugly. I'm sorry. You're standing in front of the mirror and you see that your reflection in the mirror is ugly because your hair is a mess. And so you get out a hairbrush and try to brush the hair in the mirror. But Joel's statement is that everything that is out there is an expression of the content of your own consciousness. What he's saying is that your experience out there is a reflection of your own inner self. And that means that it's an effect, not a cause. Everything that we see out there is an effect. If we ever just understood that, it would eliminate all the nonsense, because if you just get it that there are no causes out there, it's all effects, and it's all the effect of the content of your consciousness, then you're done with the whole thing. You see that trying to get something from out there, or change something out there, or acquire something out there, or do anything like that out there, can't possibly have any effect on you, because you haven't changed the content of your consciousness. And therefore your experience continues to be the same. The players may change, the picture may change, but nothing changes.
Is an example of that it's not the new job, but the meaning that you give to it, or your belief about what it means to you, that is what everything good is?
The example about that is that if this job makes you unhappy, the next job will make you unhappy in exactly the same way. Because the unhappiness you're finding at the job is the result, is an expression of your own beliefs rather than the nature of the job. The truth is, if I'm not happy, joyous, and free right here, right now, what I should do is sit down right here, right now, and go inside and see what belief I have which is preventing me from being happy, joyous, and free. As distinct from trying to go out there and remove that thing which appears to be impeding my happiness or blocking my joy or limiting my freedom.
So what do you do once you've identified the belief? I mean, I had that today. I knew what was going on with me.
Mm-hmm.
And it took some time for it to change. You just play on it. Is there like another action that you can take once the belief's been identified?
If you can clearly see the false belief, then you need to know what the truth is. So you apply spiritual truth to it. It's exactly the same principle as in spiritual healing or spiritual supply. If I believe that I'm not going to have enough, it makes absolutely no difference what I do out there as far as trying to find jobs or work or anything like that, because the belief that I'm not going to have enough is going to ensure that I don't have enough. So what I have to do is, first of all, identify the belief that I don't have enough, that I'm not going to have enough. And then I got to think, well, what is the spiritual truth? Well, the truth is that all there is God. And if the truth is that all there is God, then the truth is that I am one with God. If I'm one with God, I'm one with an omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent source. How can I possibly not have my needs met? And so the way to solve my problem in spiritual lack would be to meditate on that truth, or one of 100 other ways that you could say the same thing.
And when you say to meditate on that truth, how do you meditate on that truth? What does that mean?
Well, this is Joel Goldsmith talks about contemplative meditation. And the idea of contemplative meditation is that you pick a truth. You know, I often recommend that you read a paragraph or two out of a Joel book or some book that has truth in it until you hear a truth. And then you meditate, you sort of ponder it. run it by in your head. Well, what does it mean that he's omnipresent? Well, it means he's right here. And what does it mean that he's omniscient? Well, it means that he knows exactly what the situation is here. And what does it mean that he's omnipotent? Well, it means that he's the only power. So that would mean that God is here and aware of what's going on here and has the only power that there is, and so there can be nothing really going on here that is not God's will. And God is harmony, joy, love, bliss, grace, etc. So there can be nothing going on here that isn't harmony, joy, love, bliss, and grace. And you think about these things slowly. It's not so much that you're driving as that you're listening, but you sort of get into a place where you're listening and these thoughts flow one after another for a while, and gradually they get quieter and quieter until you get into silence. And if you've been in the silence for a second, it's like you get a click, and that click will change the picture. Whereas all the thrashing out there for 100 years won't have any effect on it at all. Putting lipstick on the mirror, looking at the mirror and putting lipstick on it and put it, then it's not going to make any difference, you know. I mean, you still look the same. And then you go back there and add mascara, and you still look the same. You go back there and try to pour peroxide on the hair, and you still look the same, you see. But if you just ever get the click within yourself, then you have heard truth. And it's clicked into you. And now your consciousness has changed. Your consciousness has changed. And when your consciousness changes, your experience is an outpicturing of your consciousness. And everything in your life must change to reflect the new belief. Not the one thing that drove you to it. Not just whatever you're thinking of. Everything must change. Because the content of your consciousness is now different. So the picture is different. You see? Spiritual healing is about knowing that God's nature is harmony, joy, and bliss. So what's the alternative? How can there be pain and malady and disharmony? If the nature of everything is harmony, how can anything be expressing disharmony? So the game is to change the content of your consciousness if you want to be happy, rather than any of the other games that we've been talking about. One way to change your consciousness is through meditation. We were just talking about contemplative meditation or any of the forms of meditation, but the thing to do is to lift yourself in consciousness. And specifically, you probably also want to do another thing which will raise you in consciousness, and that is to expose yourself to spiritual truth. In other words, read the letter of the truth, read books, read Joel books, listen to tapes, hear those spiritual truths. You're not going to know the truth that denies the lie unless you know the truth. So you need to expose yourself to the truth and listen to the truth. This is why we have the 300 Joel tapes back there. Joel's probably as good a source as any for hearing spiritual truth about the metaphysical world. And that's what we're dealing with when we're trying to be happy. We're dealing with the metaphysical world.
When you're talking about identifying the lie, examples of that are?
Thinking I could lack. Thinking I could be unemployed. Thinking that I could be hurt. Thinking that I could be alone. Thinking that I can be anything other than omnipresent bliss.
Thinking there's a problem.
Thinking there's a problem. Thinking. It's not thinking there's a problem. The problem is thinking. It's interesting, as we've said in some of the other classes, if you're not thinking, who's there? If you're not thinking, who's thinking? Who's there? If you're not thinking, who's not thinking? Because if you're not thinking the I thought, and that's the only thing that's sustaining the illusion that there is a you. So if you're not thinking, there's no you. So who has the problem? How can there be a problem? Robert's equivalent of the Gill says everything that you experience is not picturing the content of your consciousness, and that leads you to meditate and read spiritual truth and change the content of your consciousness. Robert's approach is a bit more radical. Robert's fairly radical. Robert says that everything is just an image in consciousness. And what he would say then is, rather than trying to become happier, do self-inquiry. Try to find out who wants to become happier. And this is going to the root of the problem. Try to identify who wants to be happier. And if you can get quiet, instead of getting quiet with this truth and tearing down the belief, the particular belief that I won't have enough, the question now is find out who is it that's afraid she won't have enough. This is another level, you see, of attacking the same problem rather than solving the won't have enough problem, which will leave you with the won't be tall enough problem, or the pretty enough problem, or the slim enough problem, or the heavy enough problem, or the smart enough problem, or the rich enough problem. Robert would say, why don't you inquire, who is it that doesn't have enough? And what you do is you ask yourself exactly that question. You say, who is it that doesn't have enough? Where did this person come from that doesn't have enough? Of course, your head will say, I don't have enough. Well, who is this I? Where did this I come from? What is this I? And then you get quiet. And the next time your mind says something, you ask the same question. Well, who said that? Who thought that thought? Whatever thought it is, who thought that thought? Or if your head once again says, yeah, well, that's all very good, but there's not enough. Well, who doesn't think there's enough? Go back to that. Or you go back to whatever your mind said and ask, who is it that thinks that's true? Or simply, to whom does that thought come? And your head will say, it came to me. And the question is, well, who is this me? Where did this me come from? What's the source of this me thought? And you get quiet. You don't ever answer that question, because that'll be you answering the question. And that's not the you we're talking about. That's the wrong one. That'll just be your mind answering the question. So don't answer the question. Just listen for an answer. Robert used to say that what you do is you follow the I thought. What he's saying really is you can sort of quietly just, where did this I come from? You can just sort of quietly just say I. And see if you can follow that I thought, see where it came from. What happens is it gets quiet. And the silence is the answer. The silence is where it came from. The silence is where you want to get. And this is the same silence, by the way, that the contemplative meditation that we talked about with respect to Joel. The same silence. It's just the one silence. in the silence, there are no problems and there's no unhappiness. There's not even happiness, there's joy, there's bliss. And by practicing either of these disciplines, you can develop the skill, the muscle, not a skill, just a muscle. You can develop the ability to be in the silence whenever you choose. Of course, that leads to the script work, because the truth is you can develop the muscle to be in the silence whenever you choose, except when your kid yanks you back out of it because of your script. So you really can't be free to go there until you've done the script work. This is why we do that around here. That's the reason the script and kid work came about, is because people who were getting very good at getting into the silence were also being yanked back because they hadn't done that particular work with their humanhood. But that's why we do that work. But that's the silence is where we want to be. We want the ability to go into the silence whenever we choose. And eventually we want the ability to be always in the silence, which is where Robert was.
Are you always in the silence?
No. I'm in the silence whenever I choose to be. But I still get distracted by people and things. Thoughts come by, and once in a while, one of them looks like I really ought to think about it.
But rarely do you have to do anything about it.
I don't ever do anything about it, no. I see the thoughts, and sometimes they look interesting, but they don't fool me for very long at all. I don't have to react to things much.
So that would be synonymous with being script-free.
Yeah, if you don't have to react, you script-free. You don't get caught up in it. I sort of think like, yeah. If you look at thoughts going along, thoughts just happen. And that's not a problem. Thoughts just happen, they have nothing to do with me. They're just thoughts, just like, there's images in consciousness. One of them is Lee, one of them is Sloan. There's images in consciousness, and there's also other images in consciousness, and there's also thoughts in consciousness, and there's no difference between the thoughts and the other images. Some of the thoughts have material aspects to them, but they're all thoughts. Lee is just a thought. This is a physical thought. Now I'm thinking that there's a feeling, and I'm thinking that there's a sound, as well as thinking that there's a sight. Thinking there's a smell, as well as thinking there's a sight. So some thoughts are associated with the five senses, and other thoughts are associated with the mind sense. Really, if you think about things correctly, there are six senses, and the mind is just the sixth sense. And so there's these various opportunities of information that come to all six senses. So thoughts are really no different than anything else, and the question is whether or not you pay attention to them. And if I look at something that we would call material and realize that it's just an image in consciousness that is speaking to five of my senses, and if I look at a thought and realize that it's just something in consciousness that's talking to my sixth sense, then there's no difference between them at all. And so I don't need to react to thoughts any more than I need to react to physical things. If I can know the truth about them, I know the truth about them. And when the chair drops on my foot, I forget that it's just an image in consciousness of feeling these five senses and say, ouch, and stuff like that, as we all do. But it's a matter of how long it takes for the truth to reassert itself.
So are you saying that Richard didn't say ouch since he always lived in silence?
Robert.
And he didn't feel ouch? Or
really,
Richard or whoever?
Really not very much at all. You haven't been here before. Robert was... What Robert would say is that from where he was at, which is just the consciousness, he would see the body, his body, we would call it, the body named Robert, and he would see the chair fall on the foot, and he would see the body say, ouch. And none of that would have anything to do with him, because he was not associated with either the body image or the chair image or the ouch image or any of that. None of that would have anything to do with him, see. He was just the consciousness watching. He was always aware that that was just, five sensory images and thought images and stuff like that out in consciousness, and that he was the consciousness in which it was taking place. And so it made no difference to him which body said ouch, because it wasn't him, it was just images in consciousness. And the fact was that as a result of that, he really had practically no association with his body at all, and so it probably wouldn't have hurt him, or very little. He wouldn't have felt it because he wasn't in that body, punching up behind it. Very strange. Robert was a very unusual dude. He forgot to run his blood pressure one day. And he literally went into the hospital because he looked pale, and his wife took him to the hospital, and they put him on the blood pressure thing, and there was no reading, 0/0. So they grabbed another instrument and put that on, and 0/0. There was no blood pressure at all. And somebody screamed, "Robert, you've got no blood pressure." And it was like he shook his head, oh, and the blood pressure came up. He forgot to run his body for a while. He was so out of it that the body was just, idle to a stop. And Robert just went on doing whatever he was doing, and then he remembered he was supposed to run it and started it up again. We would doubt that tale, except it was his doctor that told it to me. Wow. And that certainly is the way a person like Robert or like Rajneesh or people like that, when they die, they just leave the body. They just, park it. Withdraw their consciousness specifically from it. And we call that dying, but, from their viewpoint, nothing's changed. Except that now that image over there doesn't have blood pressure instead of having blood pressure, and who cares, Now the heart is not beating it, whereas a minute ago it was, but there's no change as far as Robert's concerned, because he's the consciousness in which all that happened. And that's true of all of you, while you're so busy trying to be happy. In fact, you're the consciousness within which that body you call you is trying to be happy.
Does that mean you're in a constant state of meditation?
If you're always in the silence, you're in a constant state of meditation. Or Jesus called it, continuous prayer. Jesus talked about always being in prayer, same thing. If you always have your mind on God, or you always have the awareness that you're consciousness, or 100 ways of saying it. But
So are you in the here and the now? I mean, I was thinking last night that the only time I feel good, really good, is when I'm praying.
mm-hmm.
What about life? I mean, what about day to day? I don't understand.
When you're in the here and now, that is the only time that you're really happy. When you're thinking about the past, you're usually not happy. You're remembering things and trying to have a better past. Or you're thinking about the future and trying to have a better future, trying to be happy. When you're thinking, you're not happy. When you're in the here and now, you're happy. But the interesting thing is that you can't be in the here and now when you're thinking. Thoughts can't possibly be about the here and now because thoughts take time. But in this instant, there can't possibly be any problem. And if you take two of those instants next to each other, there still can't be any problem. And if you string an infinity of those instants together, there can't possibly be a problem. So there's no place for there to be a problem. But there's thinking, which can manufacture nonsense in time. There isn't really any time. There's thoughts about time. But all there really is right now. And so when you are here and now, and that would be a state of meditation. If you're in the here and now and aware of it, then you're in a state of meditation or prayer. The two words are really interchangeable in the sense we're using it right now. Then you're in prayer or meditation, and then there's happiness, there's joy, there's bliss, a peaceful, wonderful place. And if in fact you stay there forever, if you could hold it there, your body will nonetheless get up and do whatever the hell it came here to do. And you'll just be watching it rather than caught up in it. And if you were watching your body go through its day's work and thinking, oh, that's interesting, it would be an entirely different experience than you being the one who's going through the day's work. A huge difference between dealing with my boss and watching my body deal with my boss. Totally different space. If you're just observing it, then you stay blissful regardless of whether the body appears to get angry or whatever it appears to do. That's immaterial. The fact is that you're not it. And the fact is that your body's going to do whatever it came here to do. It has a plan. It came here to sit here tonight. I have no idea why, or whether it'll ever want to do that again. Probably not, but if it has any sense. But, your body has a plan, and it's going to do that plan, and the only question is whether you're going to be caught up in it or whether you're going to watch it. So there is the witnessing consciousness. It's one stage towards the state of being in a constant state of prayer and meditation. The body will take care of itself just fine, whether you ever have a thought about it or not.
So that means everything's predestined, right? Mm-hmm. Karmically.
That's what it means.
Until we become a consciousness and then karma no longer affects us.
But the you that it no longer affects is not the body.
So that means the body still has karma.
The body still does whatever the body does. Who cares? There never was a body.
You don't care because it's not you. Right. But Robert didn't care. Just like Robert didn't care about it.
Right. See, the fact is that we all think we're this individual, okay? And when I become enlightened, then karma is going to stop for me, right? But there's only one enlightened being. And everybody is already that one enlightened being. Okay, and then there's all this nonsense going on the screen about images that aren't and stuff like that, but that has nothing to do with it. There's only one enlightened being. There's only one guru. There's only one jnani. It's that infinite state of Christ consciousness, that infinite state of Buddhahood. What I'm saying is that Christ and Buddha are the same being. Different bodies in the story that appeared to have realized that they were that one consciousness. So now when you become that, when you realize that you're that one consciousness, karma is absolutely irrelevant. And who cares what's going on in the Leela? It has nothing to do with anything, because it's not happening. See, now that's all just images in consciousness.
Like Christ being crucified, he was just up here watching.
It was just up there watching it.
Right.
Not he. There was no Christ.
Right.
That was an apparent picture in consciousness. Or Ramakrishna dying of cancer, or Robert having Parkinson's, or you having a cold. No difference. But you think you have a cold, and they didn't think they had cancer or were being crucified or had Parkinson's disease. The only difference is you think there's a you to have the cold. Even that's not true, because there's no you to think that. But there's a thought over there that it has a cold.
So if it's all predetermined, I know Robert says the only freedom you really have is to not react, is that right? How does that relate to the whole happiness thing?
Well, the only freedom... It's a nice thing to say that the freedom you have is to not react, but if you think you're a body, the body's going to do whatever it can to do karmically. So really, the freedom is not really a freedom. It's a matter of which viewpoint you're associated with. Whether you're associated with the transcendental consciousness or whether you're associated with the individual consciousness. That's the freedom that you have when you have it. Until you have it, you don't have any freedom at all.
If you think you're the body, you can't not react.
Well, you do things like...
I thought I was doing really good at it.
Well, you're not reacting a lot more because you're getting clearer and clearer. Mm-hmm. And you're getting a lot more God gear, you're getting a lot more transcendental consciousness going. And so you're not, you're not as controlled by all that. But the fact is that everything you're doing, that was karmic. That wasn't a free will choice. Okay. That was determined before I even took on the body. Okay? That's all in the can. That's all in the film. So all the stuff you do, the question is not whether or not you react. It's whether or not you're the one that's not reacting. See, there's two things going on here. There's the storyline. And the storyline is that we learn to not react, and we get, we become clearer, and we study things, and we learn about spiritual truths, and we learn about metaphysical truths, and we do all our spiritual practices, and we learn all this stuff, and the storyline is that we do this, and as we do this, we get clearer and clearer and clearer, and get higher and higher and higher, and react less and react less and react less, and are getting closer and closer to being enlightened. But so yeah, the story is that you're getting closer to being enlightened because you're reacting a lot less. But you're already enlightened. Or I could say I'm already enlightened, same statement. Or I could say Robert's already enlightened, same statement. All there is the one consciousness within which all this is happening. So it is really at some very fundamental level irrelevant what's going on within the consciousness. But the story is that you're closer to being done. The Leela is that you're closer to being done with the Leela.
What's being done with what?
With this game of becoming spiritually one with God.
And then you don't come back in the body anymore?
Right. Then you realize who you are, and you don't need to come back and play the game anymore.
And then what happens to
You're what you always
what
were.
happens to the consciousness?
You're what you always were. Nothing happens. The game stops for that particular being, so to speak. It's all really a very great joke, and only one of you is smiling. The only sane thing to do is see it clearly and burst into laughter, because the whole thing is so ridiculous. When you do become enlightened, you discover that nothing happened, and nobody ever wasn't enlightened, and nobody has ever become enlightened, and the body that became enlightened continues to do whatever the hell it was doing, and whether or not the story about that one is enlightened or not, there are 8 billion others, but the story is that they're not, and they're all just as much you as that one was, and none of them
Achieve.
It's a great story, but we could only sell about 3 copies of it, I think.
Look at that.
Anything else on any other topic?
Sylvie, if you have a script that people are trying to get you, what truth do you feed it?
Well, can you be more specific about?
Like, for example, a person at work, we kind of butt heads and don't get along, and I feel like she's doing little sneaky stuff because she wants to get me.
Well, you know, if your script is that, you know, people will always try to get you, let's say, people will always sabotage you or something like that, then what you need to do, and that's the reason that we do scripting kids explicitly, what you need to do is demonstrate to your kid that that's not a true belief. You as a spiritual adult don't believe that. And see, knowing the spiritual truth that all there is God, and how the hell can God be trying to get God, yeah, that's a nice spiritual truth, and it certainly blows that one out of the water. But your 5-year-old is not going to believe that.
No, she doesn't.
So that's why we do script and kid work. See, just knowing the letter of the truth about that won't solve that problem, because the kid is clinging in a terror-stricken belief to the fact that that everybody's out to get her. And so you need to do the stuff that we're going to go over in the script class. We're going to talk about how to tear that out. But essentially, you make a case for the contrary. You list all the people that are not out to get her. And there's a whole bunch of steps that we'll get through in the process of the script and kid work to tear up that belief, and we'll get rid of that belief so that you stop believing it. And once you stop believing it, then she'll stop doing it, because the only reason she's doing it is to satisfy your belief that it's going to happen. Okay? So that's the way you work with script. At a very similar level, though, I mean, you know, I was once working with a person who had allergies and asked for some help. And we addressed that one at the spiritual level. And the way you address that question, and it's almost the same, is you recognize that all there is God, and how the hell can God be allergic to God? And this person asked me this question, and that was the first thought that came to my mind, and I burst out laughing because it was so ludicrous. And she has not had any allergy to animals since. Okay? So it could be that, my point is that it could be that direct a solution if you get it all the way through. Or if you're talking with somebody, if you have a spiritual healer or somebody who can lift you to that clarity, whether you have it explicitly. I have no idea whether she ever knew the letter of truth on that or not, but the fact is that she got lifted to a place where the fact that God can't be allergic to God was her truth, whether it was ever said explicitly or not. And it doesn't need to be an intellectual truth. The point is that none of this needs to be intellectual. It just needs to be the content of your consciousness.
So it seems like it gets addressed kind of both at the mental as well as the emotional level. Mm-hmm. It has to do with a younger kid, perhaps, more emotional, but maybe an older kid, it's just about explaining to them, this is false, this is not true.
Sure.
And if you can get them to see it, it's going to drop for you.
That's right. Once it's seen, it drops. But it's got to be seen by the one who's holding the belief. And if it's a 5-year-old, it's a different... As mothers know, if it's a 5-year-old, you address the issue differently than you do with a 12-year-old or a grown-up, so to speak. A tall person. Yeah, I mean, it needs to be addressed at whatever level it's at. If it's a pre-verbal kid, then you start out by reassuring it and rocking it and doing stuff like that. You can't do anything there. Different issue again, but.
And how do you know what level it's at?
You'll know. Real clear. You'll know as soon as when you get to there. It'll be real clear. What else? Questions about anything? Okay. Quiet for 1 minute. Thank you for coming.